All right. Hello, everyone. Oh, some mellow music this evening. Excellent choice, Wes. We're here to talk about what Star Wars books do best. We love these books. They do a lot of things movies and TV can't. So we're excited for that conversation. We're excited to see all of you in the chat. We hope you had a great Thanksgiving week, or at least a good weekend if you had to work more. But we're here. We got some topics. We got one brief announcement, and we got Wes running everything, talking about everything, and punching it. Martin! Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Living Force, a UTD Network podcast all about Star Wars books and what they do better than anything. I'm one of your hosts, Eric Eilerson, and joining me tonight are two of my three favorite people. The first of them being the man who is slowly letting go of control, and it's not as easy as you'd think, Dr. Corey Helton. Hey, man.
No, it's not.
How's
it's
it going?
It's not easy. It's very challenging. So I am not running things. This is the second week in a row I've not run things. So instead, I just get to criticize them, which is my favorite thing to do. So
and by run things, you mean like you're like changing the scenes, adjusting the video elements.
Wes has always like changed the scenes and stuff. But I ran it from my computer, so I could, I hear all the changes, and I'm just I'm particular about everything because I'm a freaking weirdo. So. But it's okay. I'm relinquishing control. You know what else I'm relinquishing control of? Not the ability to make transitions happen, because I'm not good at that. But I want to talk about that. I got to test out my camper this weekend.
Oh yes, okay. Let's talk about the glory of your camper, although it's slightly less glorious than Wes Jenkins, who is still here. One more.
Hi guys, I got all these different things. You just give me a second.
No, it's on me again. There's a dog in the background. Hello, dog.
Hello, everyone. Yes, I am the master and commander of this podcast, and I should have been a long, long time ago, but now I decided to take the reins back here the past couple of weeks. I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. Had fun with their family and had a bunch of turkey and pie and whatnot, and so glad to be back to talk about Star Wars with everybody.
Absolutely. And we already got some great folks in the chat, including our very own Dr. Charles Henkel, who is at the hospital tonight, saving lives, doing the good work, and reading Thrawn Ascendancy Lesser Evil. Roundtable in 2 weeks. Don't worry, Charles, you're going to do great. But Corey, as you said, you last week we told people about how you took your camper to a Zaxby's, and you had some fun meeting your fellow man. But this week, there was a maiden voyage, like for real.
I did, yeah. Maiden voyage this past weekend for Thanksgiving. I had a couple of days off from work, so Caitlin and I went to Asheville for 4 days, Asheville, North Carolina. It's about an hour and a half from us, and this was the first big truck in the camper, right? So we pulled it with the 4Runner. I had no difficulties pulling it. That was a big fear of mine, that I wasn't going to pull it over those huge mountains you have to drive over to get to Asheville. But it went really well, and everything worked fairly well. We only had 3 major catastrophes, but everything else worked great. We had a hot shower, and it was like the most luxurious camping trip we've ever been on. It does not feel like we were camping. So I'm excited to have it done. You can keep following the rest of the build progress, though, because my videos are a little behind, and that's on my YouTube channel, documental.com. No, just YouTube.
Your other YouTube channel.
You have a website as well?
I do have a website as well. It's DIYcargotrailer.com. Be sure to smash that like and subscribe button and hit that little notification bell. For this show.
That's right. All right, everyone. So what you just heard Corey say, just cut and paste in your head. Like and subscribe on this channel, on Utini, on our YouTube channel. Or, of course, if you're listening on your podcast platforms, leave us a review if you haven't yet. Follow us, subscribe. Tell your friends, hey, I got this Star Wars podcast I listen to every week. It's sometimes about books. It's sometimes about pure insanity, but I enjoy it. It does really help us out a lot. Wes, you did mention earlier that last week was Thanksgiving, and like we said, I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. I did get to go home to Michigan and see my family. Last week we did not get to meet because of the pandemic. We stayed away for Thanksgiving, Christmas, so this was like our first big family holiday return. And it was pretty great. The turkey was delicious. My cousin carved it like a champ. It was just a really nice, like 24-hour time, which I think is the perfect time for a home trip. It was in, hang out, see everyone, watch the Cowboys lose, unfortunately, and then come out. And then my mom visited Chicago for the first time. She had never come by herself to my apartment, so I got to like show her my neighborhood and take her to a play. And yeah, it was really nice. I was very thankful.
Was it 30 degrees like it is today, like in Chicago?
Ish. It was in the 40s. It was in like the 30s and 40s. Chicago is absolutely in our winter chill, but we're having a good time. It was a great weekend. She left on Saturday, so Sunday I got to watch football all day and play Halo, as is my now what I do with my life. And I know you're all wondering, I might be on my way to a fantasy win this week. Because here's what I need, folks, as you're watching the show. Tonight, I need Antonio Gibson to get 6 points, and I will beat James. James, who just lost Christian McCaffrey to IR yesterday, is only beating me by 6 points. So stay tuned, everyone. I'll probably lose, but that's the fantasy football update. Wes, how are you doing? How was your week?
I have a 0% chance on the Sleeper app of beating Timothy this week. He has
yes.
100. It literally says 0, and he has a 100% chance of winning.
So it's like my weeks usually.
Pretty much. I don't think I'm gonna make the playoffs,
Okay.
Eric. This
No,
whole
it's
season
not going to be
sucks.
good. I don't know what's wrong with it. We are so invested. I was like, I'm going to make this league, and I am dead last. I'm dead last, everyone. So know that even if you love something, you can still be really bad at it, and that's what passion's all about. But what passion is more about is about supporting the things you love. But no one supports us more than our Patreon community. So we want to say a thank you to all of our patrons. We hope that, again, you are enjoying that Attack of the Clones commentary we did. Rogue One is coming your way in December. And as we promised, if we hit our next goal, which is $20 away, which is our Revenge of the Sith commentary, we will be getting both of those out to you before the Christmas holiday. So look forward to those. We're going to be getting together this week to finalize the time to get that Rogue One video out for you, because you want to see our faces react, which is great. I'll just have to put on my lights again. But we really do appreciate all our support over on patreon.com/Youtini, youtini.com/Patreon. We hope you're enjoying the extra shows. We hope you're enjoying things like Ghost Crew, things like Star Wars Archives not on a delay, things like Calf Faves, all the extra content you get that's not on a 3-month delay. And of course, if you don't have any money to spare, which is totally fine, or you're making those go a little more towards the holiday shopping, all of our Patreon shows, except for Ghost Crew, are available 3 months after release. So enjoy those. All right, now it is time for the Star Wars Weekly Roundup. Wes, do it.
It's the Star Wars Weekly Roundup.
Very anticlimactic. All right, there we go. For the first time in a while, that wasn't in my ears. So usually it goes Weekly Roundup, which is what you all just heard. Anyway, very brief Star Wars Weekly Roundup. Not a ton of Star Wars news this week, which I gotta say is fine. There's a lot coming our way in the next month. But we did get an announcement today from our friends over at Del Rey. Tempest Runner, the audio drama that gave us things like Dooku Jedi Lost and Dr. Aphra, which you see next to me, will now be seen next to me in the future, because we're getting what we all assumed was coming, a hardcover release of Tempest Runner. There it is. Look at that. It's the cover. It's exactly the same as the audio drama, but longer.
I really have like super fond memories of this audio drama for some reason. Like every time I see the cover, I'm reminded of how much I really personally enjoyed it. And I don't know that I like properly hyped it up as much as I did when we talked about it, but like I remember this book really, really well for some reason. Like it just stands out in my mind as being like one of the most memorable experiences of the High Republic so far, which is really interesting.
And it's especially awesome too, because this is going to have like one of my critiques of it in our roundtables, which again, if you haven't listened to our roundtable episodes, they're full spoilers, but we did go through this entire audio drama in full. One of my things was getting a little confused on which person was talking now and then, and this absolutely fixes it. Because if you've never read an audio drama script before, he reaches naturally to his bookshelf. They look like this. This is Dooku Jedi Lost. They are just a script. So as opposed to listening to it, it goes character line, like you're reading a play or a film script. So we love these. I'm so excited it's coming. And it's coming in March, which honestly given the supply chain delays and demands, things like that, I'm pretty impressed
Yeah,
that they were able to
Yeah,
greenlight that and do
For
that.
sure.
That
For
is
sure.
pretty quick turnaround when they say they let it release this week, and then you have about basically a 4-month time to print all of that. So supply chains are
Love it.
tough. I live it every day, but
It's
we're
it's
getting
not
through it.
the best. However, if you want to order that, say it. Emma had a great
I'm sorry,
comment.
Emma, in the chat, someone coughed into their mic reminded me of the experience of listening to it. Oh man,
God.
Tempest Road or bronchitis, a Star Wars story.
As our Force Toast said.
That's what he sounded like the whole friggin' time. Oh man.
But of course, you can pre-order that now. Bronchitis, a Star Wars story, Tempest Runner, the audio drama. The script book is available. It sounds like a Spaceballs title eventually, doesn't it? Like Spaceballs, the flamethrower, Tempest
Yes, it
Runner, the
does.
audiobook, the script will be on the Utini.com release schedule. It's coming March 1st. So at that point, you'll be all caught up with the end of Phase 1 of the High Republic. You'll know what happens at that point. So maybe you'll need something a little more familiar to kind of calm you down and ease your suffering. But what is the opposite of suffering? Or maybe the definition of suffering is the next thing that I wanted to just highlight, which was something that I did not expect in the Macy's Day Parade. And it was this giant freaking Grogu, which was the Funko Pop as a monstrosity. Like, it's like a kaiju Funko. And like this picture we have on screen here, it looks like a bunch of the citizens of New York are trying to take it down.
I
Like
know.
there are
like the little what's that? What is that? Gulliver's Travels, where
Gulliver's
they
Travels, but it's
yeah,
Grogu.
that's what it does look like. It's exactly what it looks like.
He's coming
It's
to
so
take
interesting.
little people over is what this is.
Yeah. Yeah, this is pretty interesting. I mean, they always
Yeah.
have something Star Wars themed at the Macy's Day Parade, but this is a Funko. It's kind of odd. Odd choice.
Yeah,
Odd choice.
And I thought it was interesting because, like, me and some of the folks in our Toy Talk Slack channel and us on the Discord and the Collections channel and a lot of us on Twitter, we love the Star Wars Funkos. But there's no secret that they've made maybe a few too many Grogu Funkos. There's just a lot of those. And if that's what you want, that's awesome. Happy for you. But the fact that the Star Wars person, like you said, Corey, in the Macy's Day Thanksgiving Parade is not a character necessarily. It is specifically a representation
Funko.
of a Funko of
Yeah.
Grogu. So that is the most popular character in Star Wars, y'all. The Funko
Do they
of
make
Grogu.
their money back from like the labor and the materials of making that Grogu in Funko Pops that they're going to sell us holiday
No,
season?
this is a
Oh,
this is a
yeah.
flex. This is a flex 100% of just being like,
Oh,
look,
yeah.
we have a Macy's Day Parade. It's a Funko. Suck it.
Absolutely. Oh, and as Angelia said, they did put the little silver ball in front of him in the parade, so he was always like reaching
okay.
for it. Very
No,
cute, very good.
I don't think we have a picture of it, but they also did that sort of weird VR thing. Are we going to talk about that?
Oh
at all?
yeah, so there was the alien from the Tales from Galaxy's Edge VR game was also a float or a balloon. I get those
Yeah.
confused.
Well, it wasn't real though, right? It was like, was it physical or was it a VR thing?
I thought
Somebody
it was
in the-
physical, but now I'm
Somebody
questioning
in
it. Someone in the chat
All
tell
right,
us.
so somebody in the chat tell us, because I saw mixed things about this. I saw
know.
online somewhere that it wasn't actually a float; it was a VR experience of the float. But I don't know if I'm wrong about that. I didn't actually watch the
Is
parade.
that what an NFT is?
Oh no! Don't even.
No, Eric. An NFT is when you buy the pixels of the VR experience of the float in VR. That's what
Got
it
it.
is.
So next week, welcome to the NFTs
Really simple,
2021.
The NFTs of floats that you can buy are astronomically expensive.
Wait, is that a real thing?
It's a real thing, and they're like $30,000 to like $300,000 people are paying for. They're paying
That's
for these
ridiculous.
images of floats that they can, I guess, buy. And
I'm not
they're
at all
like
surprised that you know this,
hundreds
Wes.
of thousands of dollars.
Yo,
because
you
it
can
infuriates me.
commission-
That's why I watch stuff that just makes me upset.
Just commission artists. Go on Twitter. Go to Jake Bartok. Go to Uzuri Art. Commission a portrait of something you love and pay an independent artist, and it will be way cheaper than an NFT, and it actually will be a one-of-a-kind thing. Anyway, it's not about NFTs. It's about Star Wars. One last thing about Star Wars. That's not an NFT. It is something about the High Republic. We did mention, obviously, Tempest Runner is coming in a physical form, but in just over a month from tonight, we are getting the end of Phase 1. We're getting Wave 3 of Phase 1 of the High Republic, and to get you all caught up, we here at Utini will be putting out content within the month. We got, I believe, at least a written guide and a video guide coming up to kind of get you all caught up on things you missed. But if you want to look right now, over at StarWars.com, we did want to plug, they put up a High Republic Phase 1 guide if you go to their news channel. Or news site, sorry. Over on StarWars.com, they do have an official one. So if you want to catch up and you don't have time to reread Rising Storm or read them all for the first time and you just want to jump right in, highly recommend go to StarWars.com and check that out today. And then, of course, go to, link in the doobly-doo below. Check it out. Wes, great job.
Thanks.
Hashtag Vlogbrothers, love it all. And, of course, if you want to buy those books, head on over to the Utini.com release schedule. You can get the Tempest Runner hardcover, but you can also get the High Republic The Fallen Star on January 4th and the High Republic Mission to Disaster on January 4th. And, of course, get those pre-orders in now because, Wes, what is the big problem?
Supply chains are running out of
Supply
stuff.
chain. There it is. Remember the supply chain.
The stuff.
And good news, guys. Everyone in shipping says it will last to at least 2023. All right. So moving on. That's a real thing. We have 2 book reviews. We do not have Charles tonight, but we do have a couple book reviews we wanted to highlight. So let's see.
That'd be great.
Who wants to go first?
We had
have
like a
2.
we
I
had
want
a
the long
rotary
one.
phone that went off. Like, wait a second, what's that? Charles, here, buddy.
Charles?
Go ahead and read the book review.
All right, Charles, you call my cell phone and I'll put you on speakerphone and hold you up next to the microphone because I know our listeners love bad audio quality.
That's their favorite thing in the world. Well, they want good audio quality. So, Wes, let's have you read Javier's review of Master and Apprentice.
All right, Javier gave Master and Apprentice by Claudia Gray 5 stars and called it a must-read. I can't believe it. Claudia Gray does an amazing job telling a very slow-paced story about the relationship between Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. Every time I read the dialogue, I could imagine them speaking it. This book, it's a must for every Star Wars fan. It has all the heart and Star Wars needs. So yes, 100% agree. Such a good book, and there's a twist in there that I'm not going to spoil for anybody. All right.
He's learned. Look at that.
Very good. Very
Yeah.
good. I love
Yeah.
it when people talk about stories having heart. That's a really good way
Yes.
to describe that, like that book.
It's what Jimmy
Oh my
McGinty
God,
says Shane
Charles
Falco needs.
is absolutely
Charles is
on.
calling. Put him on. Put him on. Wait, is this the first time caller?
Hello, you are live on the Living Force.
Hey, long-time listener, first-time caller.
Yes. What's your question?
My question is for Wes. Why does he think that he can do my job?
Corey put me up to it.
Oh my God.
Corey made you do it? That's your answer?
Oh,
put me
man,
up
this
to
was
it.
I'm enjoying the show. I won't interrupt anymore. Have fun.
Hi, buddy. Wow.
I swear to God, that was not planned or scripted. That happened live. You saw
Yeah.
it here.
Yeah, as opposed to the rest
Oh
of the
my
show,
God.
which is meticulously scripted.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. All right, just for that, Corey, compose
Oh,
yourself after that ruthless takedown by Dr. Charles Hakel. Let's tell us what Jesse thought about Heir to the Empire.
All right, that was very good, Charles. Thank you for the laugh.
Oh, amazing.
It's almost better when you're not on the show, quite frankly.
Oh, another phone call, you say?
Oh man, he just like starts playing like copyright filled music and just gets it pulled. Yeah, very good.
That would be it.
All right, Jesse read "Heir to the Empire" by Timothy Zahn, and he titled it "Truly Held Up to the Hype." It's a good title. All right, I haven't read any books the past couple months, and wow, what a great choice it was for me to choose "Heir to the Empire" as my return to reading. For some context, I have read a few canon books. Now that I think about it, only E.K. Johnson's, and I loved them. And I have read a couple of Legends books years ago. Kenobi, which I need to reread, because even though I loved it, I was 12 and don't remember a lot about it. And
Yep.
Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith, which I don't remember much either. But essentially, that's a James Luceno novel, by the way. But essentially, this was my reintroduction into Legends, and I couldn't be happier. Every aspect of the book was a hit for me, from the story, the characters, the pace, and the beautiful descriptions. If I had to choose a favorite part of the book, it would have to be the characters. Both the original and new characters were great, with Thrawn and Mara Jade being clear standouts, in my opinion. And while I absolutely love Thrawn and his tactical genius, I really gravitated towards Mara. Minor spoilers ahead, so please skip to the next paragraph if you want to avoid them. or if you're listening, just like pause for a
Skip,
second.
like,
But
30
Heir to the
seconds.
Empire is like 30 years old, so you're a little late to the spoiler game. All right, here we
It's
go.
not canon.
I know. Her immense, and I truly mean immense, hatred for Luke is so interesting. And as you learn more about her, you begin to piece things together. And while not everything about her character is revealed, you're able to infer a lot with what is, which is part of the fun. As you read more, her emotions become more conflicting, which really makes her a compelling character, which left me dying to return to her perspective despite my enjoyment of all the other characters too. Moving on from Mara, all the original characters felt natural and accurate to film versions, which is great. And the different perspectives throughout add a lot of dimensions to an already in-depth story. Sorry for my mini thesis, but this book far surpassed my decently high expectations and has really made me passionate. I've already began Dark Force Rising thanks to the wonderful ending to such an incredible book. To all those who haven't read Heir to the Empire, please read it, for it's truly deserving of its place in the Foundational Five and its constant praise. Very good, very good, very good.
Excellent review. And I as I was putting it together, I wanted that review specifically because I totally agree about the Mara thing. Like, the only downside of Heir to the Empire for me was that once Mara was introduced, I just always wanted to go back to Mara chapters because she's such an interesting character, and Zahn writes her so well. But he is right though. The other stuff, all the characters are true to film, like they said in Master and Apprentice with Claudia Gray. All the characters sound like they should, which is not always the case in Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, super solid review of Heir to the Empire.
That was
yeah.
my first Star Wars book. My
That's
very
right.
first one.
Yeah,
was
That's
that one.
right.
it's
And
a
we
lot of
didn't
people.
talk about
It's so
still-
long ago. It's just like
It's,
The galaxy
It's
far,
still-
far away.
it is still, it's still a lot of people's first book, and it is in our Foundational Five, and we've debated a lot about maybe pulling it for a Foundational Five, but then we have reviews like this that come back and remind us just how dang good it is. So I don't know. I think
Yeah.
if we legitimately decide to pull it from the Foundational Five, or any books from the Foundational Five, I think we should require everybody that's on our committee that decides that we should require everybody to re-listen or reread the book before we make the decision. That would be a really good criteria.
That's a great.
Yeah.
That's more work, but that's a really great point because that's true. The books, we on one hand, you don't want to keep a book on just for nostalgia, and a book might read differently in 2021. Like, maybe you don't want Shadows of the Empire on the 2021 must-read list, Forbes, but
I know.
Yeah, because we don't want to expand too far because the whole point of the 5 is that it is concise and it's not
Yeah.
intimidating. But anyway, more to come. That'll be 2022. That's one of the big projects, is redefining that. And all of y'all, there's already Cheryl. Yes, we know you'd be very upset with us. And Endar makes a good point. Is it more work or is it more awesome to read more Star Wars books? It's both. All right. On that though, some of these books do things that no other books can do. Heir to the Empire does some things that films simply can't. And we're going to talk all about that. But before we do, we're going to take a really quick break. We're going to let you see some clips from our other incredible live shows on the Utini Network. And when we come back, let's talk about all the parts of Star Wars books that make them so unique. See you in a bit. Speaking of someone who maybe took too many breaks, it could be said, let's talk about the legacy of Han Solo.
Very good, very good.
Hey, Maz.
Thank you.
Where's my boyfriend?
Where's my boyfriend? Yes.
Oh,
I did, however, find a full-page image of a Rancor drawn by Cam Kennedy. All right, here we go. Impadajoyos brand, just to prove to you that I'm not making this up. See if I can get it up close enough to the camera. You see him there, looking in his Bali self.
It's like if Buzz Lightyear met BB-8 in Jedi form. That's like what that looks
Well,
like.
That's nice.
Expensive. And then omnibuses, because they only print these once. So I got technically I
You're
can
gonna
have
flex, huh?
I got the entire KOTOR series in collected. It's just in a hardback.
And
it's-
autograph.
yeah, it's
right? I was
also
gonna say,
signed by
show-
John Jackson
flex.
Miller. So
If you're gonna flex completely and show off the autograph too.
All right, welcome back. We do love seeing those clips from our other shows. As a reminder for our audio listeners, we got Legends Look Back and The Cosmic Force on the Utini Podcast Network that go over Legends books and the comics, respectively. They're live on Wednesdays and Thursdays, and of course, go in your preferred podcast provider on their respective feeds. So, before we get into our main topic of tonight's show, I missed a plug earlier, which is a shame because we've talked about it for 2 weeks. Utini.gifts is still going. That's Utini.gifts is still going live for all your holiday shopping needs. It went live last week, and as we said, it is a curated gift guide. You go category by category, get the people on your wish list all set. We actually just pulled names for our Utini Company Secret Santa today, and I would imagine some of us may use that site. I didn't actually think about that till this exact moment, but I was like, you know what? If I'm buying Star Wars stuff for insert name here.
Emma said she already bought something. Didn't she say she bought the ring?
Emma!
I think she bought the ring off the site. Yeah.
Of course she did.
There's a whole cool section on book lovers. And dude, scroll up a little bit, Wes. I want these freaking bookends so bad. The AT-AT bookends. Oh my God. I want these so bad. These are sick. I love this. So, Caitlin likes the Death Star ones better, but I want the bookends. But seriously, these are really, really cool. Etsy has so much good stuff, and we link some of our favorite stuff on the website, so we check it out. Utini.gifts.
Support us, support independent creators, and just have a great holiday season.
That's right.
All right. So for our main show tonight, we wanted to talk about, with all the great things like The Mandalorian, which shirt I'm rocking right now, the Book of Boba Fett coming out, the new films that I assume will someday be made if they're not all canceled. There are a lot of ways that we can enjoy Star Wars growing up, right? Obviously, the film started all. Obviously, the TV shows have kind of stepped into the limelight nowadays, but there's still a lot of things that books can do that you just simply can't do in other parts of Star Wars. But before we get into that, guys, I wanted to pose a question to you. Let's go over the other mediums first. So, what is your favorite thing? We'll do an easy one, a softball. So, Wes, you'll especially love this. It's a softball reference. What do you guys think the films do the best out of any other thing in Star Wars? Film specifically.
Visualization. It gives you a picture of what the story is about. You can get the image in your head when you read a book about what it actually is, but if something is officially the image, say like what Luke Skywalker looks like, what Jabba the Hutt looks like, what an AT-AT, how big it is compared to everything else. I think the visualization and the scaling, I guess, would probably be a good point for the films.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I was trying to think of a clever answer to this question, like not just like what is better about the films than books, but something that books have never truly really been able to capture in the Star Wars universe is establishing the state of the galaxy. Right?
Oh, interesting.
So like let's talk about the High Republic is a good example.
Yeah,
right?
sure.
We have a ton of High Republic books already, and comics and other visual mediums, right? It's not even just the visualization. We have other visual mediums. Yeah. And I still don't really feel like we have a really great understanding of like what the state of the galaxy is. Like it still feels small in a weird way. But like you have the prequels where they show like Coruscant and it's vast, huge planet. You can just you suddenly have all the context clues you need just by the couple seconds of what's on screen, right? And we're kind of missing that in books. And I found that to be the case, kind of throughout all the books. Even in Legends, where we establish all this really complex political structure, it's still hard to establish kind of the state of the galaxy. So I feel like the films are able to like set the scene and also like move the major story forward in a way that like the books are not really able to do, I guess.
Totally. I like all that. I also want to get some from the chat. We got a couple. Those are really great. Stephanie Mack, of course, says one that we'd all agree with. John Williams music.
100%.
Like, we do get it in the books, but when it's repurposed, right? Which is great. But we love it because we saw it in the films. Like, there's the original fanfare, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away fades out, and then you just get the boom. Like, there's nothing like that.
Yeah.
Sitting on the theater opening night, getting all that. Endar says the acting performances, which absolutely. I mean, the films do have the budget to pay for actors of a very high caliber, especially in the sequel trilogy, I would say, that just gets people that have studied that really work and that can have those silent moments that you maybe don't get as much in other mediums. And Wes, I was want to double back on what you said. I think specifically of the Battle of Scarif. And like when the X-Wings come out of hyperspace and you see the amount of ships and everything that's going on. Like that is just something that we can talk about in books, and some of the books have incredible space battles. They're described in great ways, but there's nothing
It don't really
quite
do
like
it for
it.
me. Yeah.
There's nothing like
space
seeing an
battles
X-Wing.
and aerial combat just doesn't really do it for me in books. And I think that's one of the bigger reasons I've never.
Andrew is gonna come for you.
I know. I was gonna say that's one of the reasons I didn't love the Alphabet Squadron series as much. Is because like they're talking about banking to port. And I'm just like, port, is that left, right?
Yeah,
With the,
starboard.
Yeah.
It
And in
yawned.
the movie,
It
it's
yawned
like,
to the left.
exactly.
I find I
Absolutely.
was listening to the to Lesser Evil on the way into work today, and I find that if I don't try to like pinpoint exactly what's going on in a space battle, then I enjoy it much more. I'm like,
Yeah, it just kind of
when I
flows
step
better.
back,
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not gonna try to figure out where exactly they're shooting at and how many blaster bolts are going to. I'm gonna try to sit
Yep.
back and enjoy this experience,
Yeah,
and
for
not
sure.
have to
Yep.
not have to pinpoint every little thing of what's going on.
How many plasma spheres? Because like Zahn is a plug for that book. Zahn is incredible at that, and even if you're sitting down looking at the page, you're like, "Oh, this is great. This is cool." And like Rick in the chat, if you love that stuff in the books and love the jargon, that's awesome. But I do think that Zahn, I think even more so than like Freed or Alston or Stackpole, I think Zahn is able to also just kind of pull out and be like, "You don't have to get through all this. You can also just enjoy it." But the films, there is something just unparalleled about that level of action, which we're starting to get a little bit in TV shows, which is
Yeah.
obviously the next question. Now let's go both animated and live action, because I mean, how cool is it that we get to say that? It's Star Wars. We now have both.
Yeah, Now,
Which is incredible.
I do have an immediate answer for this. Is what
Go.
what can
Do
TV
it.
shows do? And I think this is why this is so exciting right now, is because we're like entering into an era of Star Wars TV, which is amazing to even hear the words come out of my mouth. Is like we get something that books have always been better at, which I'm excited to talk about this episode, is telling long form stories, right? Like
Yes.
you can't have complex plots in films because it doesn't work, right? When things are complicated, like in The Rise of Skywalker, people get mad because they don't understand.
Somehow Palpatine returned. We gotta move. We gotta go.
Exactly. It's just it's breakneck speed. It's 5 planets in 22 minutes. Like, it is nuts. All right. And that's a problem for movie storytelling, and it makes it feel rushed. But like, good Lord, how many planets have we visited Mandalorian? I would really like to see that statistic. Somebody look that
Yeah,
up in
quite
the
a
chat.
few.
Yeah, I
I
bet
mean,
there's
Clone Wars. I mean,
there's a
Clone Wars
lot.
planets.
And Clone
My
Wars,
goodness.
I mean, good Lord. I mean, so that we get that long form storytelling in TV show, which is so exciting to me because it's, frankly, in my opinion, better than the films. Like, I love
I think
the
so.
long form storytelling. I love that so much.
There was that question that they were talking about when the Mandalorian came out. It's like, would you rather have a Mandalorian movie, or do you want this weekly episodic show
No,
that comes
shut up.
out? And
Every week, give me that. Yeah, it's not even, it's
100%.
not
I
even
mean,
a
the
question.
show, because the technology has come so far to where I wouldn't say it's more or less expensive, but now there's more to do with what they have.
Right,
And
right.
so it just looks
Movie quality, just
stunning.
about.
It just looks stunning. I mean, look at our show. This is amazing, right? Look what we've
Yeah,
done.
look
with
at what we can
ourselves.
do. Yeah, I completely agree, especially about like the episodic nature of it too. Like, you can get this, you can tell the smaller stories. Like in Clone Wars specifically, a lot of those episodes that some people skip over, but like the political stuff, like the Anakin Padme episodes, you can tell that kind of stuff. Because in films, we all lament the amazing scenes that were deleted from Episode 3, which was
Yeah.
the beginning of the rebellion, but you just didn't have time. Whereas in shows, you can absolutely do that. And I would also add one thing that the shows do really well is create a communal experience. Because when a new Star Wars film comes out, there is that opening night fervor, and there's really nothing like it. Like the opening of a Marvel movie, like being there that first night, having that energy with other people is great, and it's awesome. But I do think the closest we've come to it is the continued fervor over weekly releases. Like the accessibility of the TV shows of Star Wars are way more than the books right now. They're cheaper first of all, they're cheaper, right?
Yeah.
And then also
Yeah.
people, sometimes you don't get books at the same time. You don't read as fast as other people. Like our Discord channels are amazing because people can kind of keep up with each other and you can have a little bit of communal reading. But you know that mostly everyone you know watched The Mandalorian on Friday.
Yeah.
And then you have the weekend and a week to talk about it. And then there's another one. And then you have a week to talk about it. So it's 13 weeks of community and discussion. And I think that's one of the things that the TV shows, when they made the decision to do it weekly instead of binging, because everything was binging. Everything was Stranger Things, right? I think The Mandalorian was like, nope, let's slow it down because I think this will work. And it did.
It's such a love-hate relationship with that too, man. Such a love-hate relationship
Because
you
we gotta wait.
You want it so bad, but you have to wait.
I liked it. I never
do too.
did
I
the
like it
binging.
too.
I never got into. I did
Yeah.
the binging when I watched Breaking Bad, and that was it. And I watched Breaking Bad, I don't know, 8 years after it came out. So
Yep.
I binged it. And it was great, but I like the weekly episodic. I mean, I'm an old school kid. I was waiting for the shows to come on. I was waiting for like every Friday or every Thursday night. Believe it or not, The Simpsons used to come on on Thursday nights, and my family would sit down as a family, like, come on, everybody come in and watch The Simpsons.
And watch The Simpsons.
And you have to get there
Wow,
because
that
if
is
it starts,
fantastic.
you couldn't pause it.
Not
There's
at
no,
all.
like you gotta get here. It's starting. It's starting.
I would be grounded. I'd be grounded for doing something bad. My dad would just poke his head in and be like, hey, we're in there watching The Simpsons. You can come watch. And I'm like, all right, family.
Oh, that's awesome.
I
dude.
love. Yeah. So on the other end
That's
of the
great,
communal
Wes.
aspect is the final thing I want to talk about. We're not going to touch comics necessarily in this one because they're similar to books, and our friends on the Cosmic Force do a great job with that. But video games, we are in an odd part, an odd time of Star Wars video games. Thing we can announce. We're getting really good ones, but we're not getting a lot of them. Like there were those years where like Revenge of the Sith, Battlefront 2, Lego, like there was just coming out. But regardless of that, what do you guys think video games do better than anything else? And I'm gonna start with the easiest answer, which is immersion. I mean, you're in Star Wars. I mean, I think it is highest in probably like the VR version of Squadrons, where they, I don't have a VR. But watching the videos of people like Alex Damon and stuff put on the VR headset and be in a cockpit, like that's, you're not getting that anywhere else. And even playing as Cal Kestis or playing Battlefront 2, you are, especially with headphones, you're hearing Star Wars around you. You're hearing the world. You're hearing the blasters. You're going through planets as yourself. And I think that's something that just can't be replicated anywhere else. And for better or for worse, I think sometimes it's a little much. But what do you guys think video games also do as a medium, at least in the current system, that books and movies can't quite get?
Well, I mean, they are kind of like books in a way that they introduce us to new characters. I mean, were there characters in KOTOR that were developed just for KOTOR, and then
Yes.
off
Oh, yeah,
that,
all of
they-
them.
Yeah, for sure. Almost
Yeah.
and then
basically
they
everything.
spurred off of books.
Yeah.
Cal Kestis, like you said, for and then, man, there was Dark Force Rising. There is
Was Kyle Katarn invented for the video games or not? I don't know the answer to
I
that.
think
actually.
so. Legends.
Yeah,
Let's see where they show up.
But yeah, I mean, like they have a lot of new characters are brought about, and then they're introduced into other things in a lot of books. They're put into books after they are video games. So, I mean, there's no other better answer than immersion, Eric. I mean, you took the easy one. Thanks a lot.
I did take the easy way out there.
I guess the last thing I would add to the video game thing that we get two things came to mind. First is kind of along the same lines as immersion, is like you get to like the first person element, I guess, of Star Wars video games, right? But like the other thing that kind of comes to mind is like the superhero-esque, unrealistic side of Star Wars, which is fun to explore.
Like the Force Unleashed kind of stuff. Where
To pull the Star Destroyer out of the sky. And like, I mean, everybody knows the names of like dark side powers because of KOTOR, right? Like everybody does. Like like Force Storm and like
Force Run.
Yeah, all that stuff
Which
is
was
from the
an
video
episode.
games.
None of you knew that it was in Phantom Menace until we played KOTOR. We had no idea that that's what it was.
No, yeah, exactly. I mean, all the stupid superpowers like drain life. Like everybody knows that that's like a dark side power, but of course that's a video game power. Like, can you imagine? Can you imagine if in the Star Wars films, Count Dooku's like, Master Yoda, drain life. and Yoda is like, he like puts his hands up to block it or something dumb. That would be so ridiculous. Like,
and then Dooku is like electrocuting them, but then he runs out of force power and he has to wait for it to recharge. He's like,
Exactly,
I will get you in a second once my meter refills.
They have,
So
they have to announce
almost
what they're
like
doing.
almost like the
LARPers.
game, the gamified side of Star Wars is in video games, which makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I like what I'm sorry, I'm reading comments here. What Stephanie Mack says. It's long form immersive storytelling in games too. You get more out of it the more you choose to put into it, and I think that applies both to multiplayer games like Battlefront and to single player games. Because there's planets that I love purely because of Battlefront. Because like I've been around them so much, so when they show up in the movies or show up in books, I'm like, oh, I've been here. I get this. I know what this feels like. Or like Han Solo has a DL-44 blaster. How do you know that? Well, because I had to put it on in Battlefront.
100%. I forgot about that. Yeah, the only reason I know any of the names of the guns is because of Battlefront.
Exactly. And
then
like
the single player games, especially if you're really bad, because you have to keep playing it over and over and over again, and then you get lost on Zepho and you're there for a day and a half, and so you get to learn all the names of the creatures that kill you, and you have to go back and change up, and then the names of the ships, and then like the different ponchos that you can get, and it's all from Jedi Fallen Order, but still.
Utini Game Night on Friday evenings. Check them out on our YouTube channel. So of course all those do things very well, but because we are a book show, we now want to run down the categories we use for review, which are the plot, the characters, the originality, the writing, and the entertainment. Now, we've talked about these a while in the past. That's on why we score things a certain way. But for tonight, I wanted to go through each of these and kind of talk about why Star Wars books can excel in these most specifically, more than any of these beautiful mediums. So let's start, of course, by the plot.
Yeah,
Should
we name drop what the 5 categories are? We haven't done that in a while.
Oh, yeah, I just did, but let's do it again.
Oh, I didn't hear you do that.
Do in detail. Do in detail.
Okay, yeah. So I guess what? Sorry.
It's
What
okay.
I'm trying to say.
It's okay, man. I get you.
This is what I really meant to expand upon it with as the review team. So our Utini review team, we have 5 categories that we discuss in detail whenever we review any book, and we came up with this years ago. We've been doing it ever since, and it's pretty solid. Plot, characters, originality, writing, entertainment, and like we thought these would be good points to discuss, like books as a medium, because we like had the philosophical discussion of choosing these as categories when we picked these to review the books, because we think that these sort of areas or categories like are standout areas that fit the books in particular, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So like with the plot, whatever you're going through has plot, right? But how do you guys think plots can be expanded and described in books only? Like we can have, everything has a story, has a beginning, middle, and end for the most part. Multiplayer games usually have a loose plot you're trying to get through. But with books, how would you guys say that a really, really good plotted book can expand better than anything else?
Yeah, I think in particular for me, and like this is another one of those things too that like it's kind of hard to have an objective conversation about because everybody has their own real answer and experience with this type of thing.
We're subjective.
But plot, like for a really good plot to get me really good, it's one of the reasons I like James Luceno books so much, is they have to be a little convoluted, like not like
a little bit.
Yeah. Not like I don't like stories that are necessarily super predictable, I guess, if that makes sense, right? And all the James Luceno books are like that. They have this long build up till we get to the huge climax, right? A lot of people hate that about his books, but I personally love that. And I also think that like really good books that I really find personally amazing, like Master and Apprentice is a good example, have a really good twist at the end, right? Like you don't see it coming at all, right? And like we said earlier, we don't want to spoil it for Master and Apprentice specifically, but like
I'll do
I
it.
feel no.
Wes,
Shut up,
no,
Wes.
Come on. I've been holding it in for so long.
I don't feel like movies do that well. Like it's really hard to pull off a really good twist, and you can only do it once too, right? You never get that again when you rewatch it. Like Pulp Fiction is a great example, right? Like nobody understands that movie until you've seen the whole thing, right? It doesn't make any sense. And I kind of felt like that with Rian Johnson's mystery movie. What was that last year?
Knives Out.
Knives Out. Yeah. Like that movie, you can never watch it twice, right? It's amazing, but you can't like experience it twice. And books are able to sort of like, I think, capture that little bit of convolutedness and also like a really good twist in a way that movies can't really do. So like Thrawn's books are great examples because I think I said Thrawn's. I meant Zahn's book about Thrawn.
Thrawn's. Yeah.
Exactly. Zahn's Thrawn's, you know. His books capture that pretty well because he's able to like be those couple steps ahead. I think it would look kind of ridiculous if it was on screen. And it kind of does in Rebels. The way he's sort of always ahead in Rebels is a little goofy at times. And I think that was one of the big criticisms of him as a character.
One of the, like, just along the lines that you're talking about is from Timothy Zahn is Scoundrels. You can read that book all the way through and then find the huge twist at the end and then read it a second time and be like, oh, this makes a hell of a lot more sense now that I'm reading this, that I know what's going on. And so that's one of the plot points that I saw in a book, or that when I first read a book that I thought was amazing. I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I asked Zahn that question when he came to one of the Comic-Cons that were down here in Houston a couple of years back. I specifically asked that question. I'm sure people in the audience were just like, who the hell is this kid talking about Scoundrels? We're here to talk about Outbound Flight, you freaking idiot. So I was just like, all right, I'm sorry. I just want to talk about Scoundrels. I just finished it.
Yeah, Angelina makes a good point in the chat too, that she says in that way, like, books can get away with more exposition than movies. And I completely agree, because I think when you're watching a movie, if there's a little too much exposition setting up the world, setting up relationships at the beginning, if you take like an hour of it, of the movie, and then you basically get an hour left to like do the rest of the movie. And I think in a book, I mean, if you take, let's say, even outside Star Wars, let's say Lord of the Rings, right? I mean, there are pages and pages of descriptions of the food and the environments, but books can do that, and they can really make you feel invested in the place. And I think a lot of good Star Wars books that are plot driven, because we talk about plot driven and character driven a bit on this show. And I think if a book is more plot driven, it's more about that world. It is more like the Thrawn Ascendancy trilogy, I would say, that is telling you about what's going on in that part of the galaxy. And by the end, you really intimately know the planets. You know the political structures. You know the galactic makeup of something. And I think that Star Wars books and books as a whole just really do a great job with expanding the scope of what you know about a place. Like fans of movies, as I am, I love movies. And this is not an anti-movie, anti-show podcast, to be clear.
No, we hate movies. We specifically the Star Wars movies.
Well, yeah, those obviously they're all bad. We're all shills from Disney. But other people, like when you're a fan of movies, you get to go into so many cool behind the scenes things. But book fanatics, like real book fanatics, are the best kind of insane people. Because you know
they're always smarter than you too. Like always.
You know everything. Like you know what the weather is like on this planet. You know what the characters were born like. And just as time goes on, like a really well plotted book takes you through an entire journey. Like Lost Stars by Claudia Gray is very character driven, but it also has so much plot where you learn about the Jelucan politics. You learn about the Imperial Academy. You learn about the beginnings of the Rebellion Order. Like there's just so many things about the universe that are put into a book, and that would all be secondary in a film and a TV show. So I think a book does that very well, which leads me then to my next question to you two, just based on plot. What are some Star Wars books that you think this is best because it's a book? Like if it was a film, we'd lose a little something. If it was a TV show or a video game, we'd lose a little something. This had to be a book because of its plot. Scoundrels is a good one. I already say Wes. I think that's a great choice.
Okay, good. I'm off the hook.
You gotta have another one. You gotta have another one.
That is a good question. You know, I would say that it is very rare, I think, that you can say that like this would be better as a movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah, true.
Right? Like is the movie ever really better than the book? Like really ever? Like is that
The
is that
Natural.
possible?
That's it. The movie The Natural. That's it.
Natural.
But I will say, I actually have one that's going to be a weird answer because of what's coming up, and
Gotta
that's
pull the timeline to
Kenobi.
give you a good answer. Oh yeah, Kenobi.
But, but here's why.
interesting.
Because next year we're obviously getting the Kenobi series, which I think will be great. But why I don't think it's just going to be the Kenobi book is one, legal reasons. Why redo the thing that's in Legends?
Mhm.
But two, like the book Kenobi is actually very slow and it's very meditative. And the plot of that book takes a long time to develop because it takes a lot of time away from Obi-Wan, especially at the beginning of the book. And there's no way a visual medium is going to keep the hero out of it for that long. There's like 100 pages without him. And I think that the book taking that time to establish that plot and establish that world is really something that I think only could have been done in that book. And I think the show's going to be spectacular. It might be my favorite TV show ever made. But I don't think it can do what that book did in the same way.
That's fair. You know, I have a good answer. I don't think that any of the audio dramas would work as films at all. At all.
Ooh.
Yeah, which is interesting
That's
because
interesting.
they are kind of plays in a way,
Yeah,
but
they're a
like
different medium still.
like they move at a pretty quick pace. Like, can you imagine Dooku Jedi Lost with how we were bouncing between the
With the
narrator
flashback.
and like
The
in the
flashback, flash
flashbacks? That
forward,
would
yeah.
be really hard to pull off as a film. And you know, that actually brings up a good point. Is the whole flashback flash forward is really hard to pull off. There are very few movies that do it really well. The Godfather, right? There's very few movies that do it
Very good
well,
movie.
right?
Very good movie, yep.
And you have to spend a lot of time in the flashbacks, right? You can't jump
Yeah.
around in a good pace. I feel like so. You know, a lot of pacing ideas in general, I think, just generally work better in books, like for sure.
I love that. And I want to touch on the flashbacks again a lot in our writing section as well, because I got a couple specifics I want to hit there. But let's go to our character section, our section that honestly in our reviews lately we write about quite a bit, because a lot of canon especially is very character focused, which means that we're basically reading the book because we want to see the evolution of the characters. What they do is very good, but it is still secondary to the journey they go on. And a lot of independent films are like that, right? That like lower budget, because frankly you can't film as many like chase scenes and things like that. You just want to see the person and the journey they go on. And I think books, I think this is the most obvious advantage books have, because you're inside the mind of characters. Like you get the subconscious, and unless it's Blade Runner with like the voiceover, depending on which cut you watch, I have only watched the final cut without the voiceover. That's my little nerd shame. I think that films and TV, you just can't quite get to that level of intimacy that you can reading a book while inside a character's head.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think this is a good example for Queen's Hope, Queen's Peril, Queen's Shadow for Padme.
Yes.
That whole
yes.
trilogy.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's a great it's a great character driven trilogy, because we finally get to see, we see a lot more in these books from where Padme started and up until where she ended. But I didn't want to draw
We know
that
where
out.
she
Sorry.
ended.
But, so we find out about the handmaid. A lot of it is about the handmaidens. We saw a little bit of the handmaidens that when I first watched the movie, maybe all of us watched the movie, didn't really pay that much attention to. We saw yes, they have she has these handmaidens and they have these names, but this book made us want to watch the movie again to get to interact with these characters that we haven't seen before. And then it helps build up Padme as this young queen that takes over Naboo, and then goes on to be a senator, and then goes on to ultimately to her demise. But still, it has a lot more. Yeah, it has a lot more information. Definitely, we get in all three books too. It wasn't just like a little bit here, a lot more in the second book. Not sure about the third one yet, but we'll see. But I think that the Queen's Shadow, what do you call it? Queen's Trilogy?
The Queen's Trilogy, I guess we'll call it.
The Queen's Trilogy is a great, it's a great.
We've decided.
Great idea for, it's a great character-driven trilogy that I guess would probably be on the top of my list for characters in Star Wars to begin with. I mean, we also have. I mean, Thrawn has 3,800 books, of course, and
naturally
so he gets his own character. I mean, Darth Vader, but Padme is the start of it, right? She is the start of what began with the Skywalker saga.
Yeah, that's a great example of that. And I want to hit on something that Stephanie said in the chat, and then Angelia said in the chat. Stephanie Mack brings up Dark Disciple, which is a book that every time we bring it up, everyone goes, "Oh yeah, Dark Disciple." And I think that book really did a great job with Quinlan Vos and Asajj Ventress in a way that, even though they had some animation ties, and it was originally going to be a Clone Wars series of episodes, the book allowed it to get a lot more intimate, and allowed you to see a lot more of the various sides of the character. Because even if they're in public and they're acting a certain way, with a book, you can take a second to retreat back into their mind and really know what they're thinking, especially with Asajj, especially with Ventress. So I love that. And of course, the memories chapters, as Angelia says, from the Throne Ascendancy books are something that you couldn't put in a film or a TV show because, yeah, they're flashbacks to an extent, but they're inserted in such an interesting way that are basically exposition machines through character. So it's plot through character in a flashback in the middle of a novel, and Timothy Zahn's a madman is basically what I'm saying. So I love those examples, and I love that it doesn't just have to be inner monologue in italics. It can also just be taking these moments to really examine what characters are thinking in the book as opposed to in a film or TV show.
Yeah, I feel like the books can sort of capture the. I'm not going to word this correctly.
It's going to be great.
My therapist's wife could put this into words for me. I wish that she could just like speak for me sometimes. I feel like books can properly capture the sort of complexity of emotions and feelings and sensations of like what's happening around them in a way that doesn't really. You have to look in the character's eyes, in an actor's eyes, in the film to see that, right? Like Anakin's turn to the dark side, right? Like that moment is less meaningful in Revenge of the Sith than it would be in the book because like you got 4 paragraphs. Yeah, very good.
Yeah,
4 paragraphs about it.
Yeah, like that description is perfect, Corey, because I literally just picked up the Revenge of the Sith novelization from my shelf and realized this is the exact example of character in book versus film. Yep. This is literally a film that they then decided, hey, Matthew Stover said, what if I make this a completely character-driven book and I describe the characters through their own minds and through the epic lens of the galaxy, which is why it makes this book such a singular piece of perfection. And if you ever want to see the difference between characters on screen and characters in book, this is, this is it. Corey, you nailed it. This is it. This is the answer to the question. We did it.
Yeah, I mean, we should find you should find whatever the scene is where Padme and Obi-Wan speak at the very end of the film. Find what page that's on, Eric. If you,
I'm gonna do my best.
That is like, this is a hardback edition, by the way. This is that scene where you really get inside of both Obi-Wan's and Padme's head is just an utter masterpiece. I mean, it really just captures the doubt and the fear and the conflict that everybody has. Like, you just can't get that all in a couple seconds of staring into an actor's eyes, right?
No.
Anakin is the father, isn't he?
Yes.
I'm so sorry.
Yes. I know. That's it. That's all you get on screen. But like in the book, it's like a whole chapter. I mean, it's a lot. So
maybe I should read that one. What do you think?
Oh my God, Wes! Every single time this comes up, I want to slap the shit out of you, bro. Read the damn book.
It's perfect. It is perfect.
It is the number 1 book on our website. It's the only perfect 10, I believe. No, it's 9.9. Not a perfect 10.
Well, we're gonna adjust that. But what here? I'm gonna look for that page. Corey, tell us about originality here.
All right, so originality. Okay, so this is a little more hard, I think, to get people's head around, and it's continually a challenge on the review team. I feel like to address this internally at Utini is like what is originality? Because I think this particular category is a little more. it's less concrete, right? Because I think
Yes.
there is a nature of all books and stories that feel quote unquote original, right? Like, so just put that in the context of Star Wars, you have to like really sort of tease it out. Like like can you think of a good example of anything like a good book in recent years that has been
For originality?
incredibly original? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I got two. One,
Okay.
our book of the year last year, Thrawn Ascendancy, Chaos Rising. We gave
Okay,
super
that's a good
original
one. That's
because
a great
it
one.
basically creates
Right.
an entire new sector of space. It tells you
Yes.
the house structures of the Chiss. It creates all that. And then two, on the other side of originality, is our last roundtable. It's Ronin. It's a book.
Oh yeah.
Wow, yeah.
That's a great.
Yeah.
That's another great example.
Again, two of those, like Thrawn could probably more so be a TV show if you gave it the Game of Thrones treatment, right, and really took the time. But Game of Thrones, of course, famously was first a book series.
Mhm.
So
That's right.
you know, it's still a book series. It's gonna finish someday, maybe. But I think
No, it's
that
not.
those two books really encapsulate what is so incredible about it. Like Game of Thrones and really great TV shows can set up worlds brilliantly. We talked about that when we were talking about TV shows. Like they can really take the time to show you the stakes of the galaxy. But books like Chaos Rising can really lay out what the rules are. Books like Ronin can use syntax and can use literally
Yeah.
the makeup
Mhm.
of those sentences to create the world in certain ways. And that's something you can only get by reading those words or listening to that audiobook.
So
Yeah.
originality was probably really big when Legends before canon, because the authors were creating these brand new worlds, creating these brand new characters,
And
that-
continuing the story like in a
Exactly.
new way. Yeah.
yeah. So that's like I'm thinking that's where most of the originality stemmed from in Star Wars after the 3 George Lucas films, and then we had there's Splinter of the Mind's Eye right there.
Yeah, we sure
Oh, yeah,
did,
it's
Wes.
fine. Yeah, that's funny.
But
Yeah, we don't talk about that one.
Slightly less.
But it's like that's essentially where all the elaboration and all the new worlds and all the new characters started coming from, and then we just built on all of that. So that's, I mean, originality, Legends, Jared, Freddie. That's your world, right?
Yeah, exactly. They'll talk about that on Wednesday. But yeah, and Angelique says in the chat, like, they basically just gave Zahn and all those guys free range to do what they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And with Zahn, it worked great. He created Thrawn. It made basically episodes 7, 8, and 9. And then with others, you know, it worked out fine. And then you had a 28 novel series that was all about bugs and aliens. And, like, you know, it was still very original. But again, you can take those risks in a book because you can really just take the time to flesh out whatever you want. And I think that's really incredibly cool. And I mean, if you're looking for new ones that have that, I gotta say, Chaos Rising and Ronin just top of my list for sure. So then this one's a little less obvious than others, but I think it'll make sense because writing. Now we do forget, I think, sometimes that films and TV shows are also written, right? There are screenwriters that literally have to write everything that's said. So they have to write just like novel writers do, but novel writers obviously have a little more control. They are literally crafting not only the dialogue, they are crafting what's going on around everybody. They are describing the scenery. They have an unlimited budget in their imagination. They don't have to work with a scenic artist to make sure they can create that. And I think that's where books have the advantage over any other medium, is that in visual mediums, there are astounding artists. And we can talk about blank checks all we want, but there's always a check. There is always a person that has to make the thing digitally or physically you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't at some point have a million things. Whereas the Sith in Legends, if you're writing a book, they can do anything. You can eat planets. You can have millions of soldiers. Like your budget for your imagination has no bounds.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the writing, the authors that really realize that they have a magic wand that can do absolutely anything, is kind of the best way to do that. So
It's so funny that we talk about writing in the context of all mediums too, right? We're always talking
Yes.
about,
Yeah.
oh, the writing in that film was just not very good. It's like, But did you read it though? Like, it's like, how do you, like, how do we? It's like we always have like a really weird, mixed up, like conception of writing. I think this is another one of those that's pretty hard to grasp. I think as a review team is like,
as someone who doesn't do it.
yeah. It's like if you're, and let's be clear, we do have some pretty dang educated folks on the Utini team in regards to literature and writing and professional writers and all that good stuff. But
is a smart.
The three of us, not really. Let's be honest. Like,
yeah, including me, the guy who writes all the reviews. Nothing.
Right. We just don't have, Charles and I are doctors. Eric writes all this stuff. Wes is a freaking professional businessman that I found out had an MBA literally right before this podcast started. Like
incredible.
We don't have literature backgrounds at all, right? So to grasp what good writing is kind of hard, I think, to get your head around if it's not something you're educated in.
I think
yeah.
so.
But there are ways to like see it. And real quick, Angelia in the chat did my job for me. Page 230 of the Revenge of the Sith novelization is that Anakin or is the Padme Obi-Wan scene. So shout out to that. Wes, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, every time I write like the Twitter messages for what our a show's gonna be about in the morning, or some of the descriptions of the podcast, all I think about is some of the people on the writing team are like, good Lord, what is he doing?
I know. Every time I write anything for the website or anything, I just get the writing team to look at it and just like rip it to shreds. Just do it. I know it's awful. Just freaking do it.
Because writing is an absolutely hard thing, and I think that's one thing I want to talk about with a couple of specific books from you guys. I think we've all read Star Wars books that feel like auditions to write a film, right? Where the author is like, I want someone at Lucasfilm to read this book, and if they like it, then they'll let me write a movie. And I think it's kind of hard to describe, but when you read it, you're like, okay, you're setting up things, and it feels more like they would rather be doing that.
Yeah.
And I think it's happened less lately. I think that a lot of modern Star Wars writers are plucked as novel writers, like they actually write novels, and now they're in Star Wars because of that. But what are some books for you guys that really just feel like, oh, you wanted this to be a book, and it was a book?
Anything by James Luceno. I know I keep bringing that up, but like,
no, it's right. It's
James
right,
Luceno's writing is very much literature focused. Like
yes,
that man. I don't think they could let that man write a film. I think it would be 4 hours long. Like, I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
And
A23 presents James Luceno's, or A24 presents James Luceno's Star Wars film.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I mean, the other thing I was gonna say is like,
don't take all the good ones.
I totally lost it. Wes, come in. You jump in.
Wes, go.
Mine would
jump in.
I would love it to be a movie. I would love it to be an 8-hour long. I would be the Godfather series. What I'd like it to be, but the Bane trilogy. The Bane trilogy to me is books. You have to read that. You have to take in like the way Bane starts out and the way he uses his anger and everything, and he goes to and he learns the rule of two, and he takes on the other Sith, and he goes to the temple, and I'm just ruining everything for everybody. I'm sorry, but it's such a great trilogy. But it definitely has to be read. I mean, if you watched it on screen, you would miss so much that's in that entire trilogy. That I mean, then someone would ask you, "Oh, you watched the movie? Did you read the books?" Because that's kind of what my hang up is on Dune. Like, I don't want to watch Dune because I feel I'm gonna miss out because I have this 800-page book in my other room.
The writing is
so
harsh.
Good.
It's harsh though.
Dune.
The
Watch
movie.
Dune.
You're talking about the book.
Yeah.
Oh man.
It is. No, it is.
I remember I was gonna say that we've talking about the concept of writing in Star Wars is like a good thing to kind of think about is like, I feel like we've really hit our stride in the last like 3 years of canon, because I think with a couple rare exceptions, I think we kind of started off a little rocky with the canon novels.
Sure.
I think making that transition into figuring out like how much freedom to give writers, I think was really challenging for Disney Lucasfilm early on, and like you could see that in the writing too, right? It felt like a lot of authors were sort of backed into boxes a little bit, like in the stories that they told. We've seen that around video games. We've seen that around certain character books. Like it feels like they had to fit the story, like in a box. So like I think what makes for good writing in Star Wars books, and one of the things we always have to consistently look at when doing all the reviews is like, is it smooth to read? Like, is it feel like it jumps around a lot? Is the language complex? Like, we've talked about Alexander Freed's work kind of feeling very technical at times, right? Versus Claudia Gray, which she has so many young adult novels that really speak to that age group of like the plots are no less simple, but the word choices are, and the chapter formatting is, and things like that are sort of the technical aspects of writing that we're always trying to look at and think about. Then you have stuff that's weird and unique, like Ronin, which is like, how do you even begin to talk about writing as for a book like Ronin? Because it's so unique, right? So, but also is challenging at times. So, like, how do you give that like a positive or a negative review? And that's really, really challenging to do. As semi-professional reviewers at this point.
Yeah, and I think on the other side of the spectrum from Ronin too is one that kind of marries the writing category and our last category, entertainment, which is the thing that's been kind of taking over our whole community lately. It's the High Republic. I think that the High Republic from get-go was books. It was books and comics, but it was books. And when you read Light of the Jedi and Rising Storm specifically, they are books that were made as books, and they will be enjoyed as books. I don't think these were pitched to be movies. They weren't pitched to be TV shows. And Charles Soule and Kevin Scott write them as entertaining novels. Like the words they use fill you with entertainment and exhilaration, and even the cadence in which they write are being used to give you the mental image, not because they're like, oh, if this was a movie, this is how it would look. It's like, no, this is the book and this is how it looks, and you can see it because they write it so specifically. And we mentioned flashbacks earlier, and I think that's one of the great things about like Light of the Jedi is that it goes between so many different planets and so many different times, and we get little flashbacks here and there, but it really jumps around and creates the universe through personal stories as it's written. And then by the end of it, when it says like it was the Light of the Jedi, it doesn't feel corny because it feels earned. It has been, setting all these things up in Rising Storm when they're like, and then Elzar Mann flew on a dragon and threw his lightsaber because of course he did. You can comment on that in your writing, whereas in a TV show or a film, you could see that, and God knows I want to see that. But you don't get that little extra bit of commentary and flair and fun as you do when you're writing a novel. And I think the High Republic has really keyed in by novel writers writing those books.
Yeah.
And I like those a lot. So.
They don't have to pay for those for that computer visualization either. They can just write it down.
The sandballs.
They don't need that freaking room that they use to film The Mandalorian, like the TVs, like
the
all
volume.
The they don't need that, right? You just sit down at a little desk.
Like, we'll use, we'll use the reader's imagination. It's like, that's perfect. Exactly. It's so much cheaper.
And
all right, so Kevin, we can't put the dragons in the film, but in the book, of course. Which then, of course, leads us to entertainment. So visual mediums are obviously the king of entertainment. As we said at the top of this segment, seeing a Star Wars movie with a giant battle is entertaining. The Williams music flares up, and there's action and fun and gusto, and it's incredible. But I think there are some books that, when they really lean into the entertainment value of what they can be, when they lean into being Star Wars, can kind of get to that level. But what do you guys think about, like, what are some books that really just give you that rush, that give you that entertainment value of the films? Because I think the best we can maybe think for entertainment is like on par with the feeling of watching one of the really good films.
But it's still not the same.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the same. I mean, there's some, we were talking about at the top of the show about like what makes film stand out, and I think it hits you in so many different ways. Like there's like the music and the sound and the sight. I mean, you're using lots of different senses to experience it, right? Whereas it's hard to achieve that, I think, in books. So I don't know that books will ever really truly achieve that, but it's a different set of emotions. Like there is
it's
something
intimate entertainment. Like if you're reading
exactly.
it by yourself,
That's a really good way to put
like,
it. Yeah.
Oh, this happens to me. as I
Right.
read it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can put yourself in it. I feel like a little better than you can like a film. You know, you already brought up Bane, Wes, as
I know.
being like
It's too
as some
good,
of the most entertaining, and I mean, it really is. I think there's so many things that have to keep to stay at high points for a book to be truly entertaining. The sort of flow of the hero's journey and a climax followed by, you know, that the pit of despair, then additional
Yeah.
climax. Like it's like, you know, all the way the story flows is really, really important to keep you entertained, I think. And like there are so many entertaining Star Wars books that there are certainly some that stand out more so than others.
One way to help you get more entertained by reading a book, if you're not entertained already, is a thing that Maggie does. I do it as well. Is you buy the book and you read along with the audiobook. As long as it's unabridged, it's you have that background music, you have those sound effects, you have the different character voices if Mark Thompson's reading it. So
That's right.
it helps out. I think I'm doing that right now with Lesser Evil. And it really does help out a lot with I guess seeing characters in a different light just by the different voice that they've been given, and also by pronouncing the name of the person that's on there helps out a lot too, and the worlds and the vehicles and everything. So that's one. I think that's one like neat hack or a tip is if you're kind of feeling, I don't know, where books aren't really as entertaining as they used to be, or something along those lines, throw in the audio book and read along with it. It's like somebody reading it to you. It's great. I love it.
Yeah, there's a single book that I've heard helps with that more than any other, and it's a book that I think becomes one of the most entertaining books and trilogies that I've ever read, and it's the Aftermath trilogy. This is a book series that is written in a cadence unlike any other book, and a lot of people have a really hard time keying into it, especially in the first book, but by the time you get to the second and third, the entertainment is so epic and the scale is galactic. It's the finale, it's Return of the Jedi, it's Revenge of the Sith. It is these giant third chapter battles. And from what I've heard, because it has a different syntax that makes it hard to read sometimes, the audiobooks really kind of let people key in, especially to the first novel. And I think that if you're looking for things that have that galactic scale, like Corey, you said at the beginning, like sometimes books have a tough time kind of setting the stakes of the universe. The Aftermath trilogy takes the stakes from Return of the Jedi directly, so you kind of already know what's happening, and then adds in that multi-battle, multi-front, multi-character kind of thing by the end of the third book. And once you've read those three books, once you've kind of inserted yourself into those battles, into those character relationships, it becomes truly one of the most entertaining experiences I've had reading a Star Wars book. And that's a book I read at the job I was at the time. I was reading the paperback by myself, like in an office, and it felt like watching a Star Wars movie. It was just that much fun. And I think that I mean, looking forward to next month ish, I guess by the time this is recording, The Fallen Star, I would guess, may have some level of that. I mean, to end a wave is something we haven't gotten in a while. I mean, it's the end of a trilogy, technically. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of the battles in there give us the entertainment value that we've come to expect in some of these A+ books or incredible films.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, all that being said, gentlemen, as we come to the end of our just basically stunting on every medium that's not books, let's boil it down. What's your favorite thing about reading Star Wars books versus any other medium? What's your favorite out of all these we've talked about? Maybe it's things we haven't. When you get a new Star Wars book, you're like, I'm so stoked because I get this. And it's not what I get watching a movie or a show.
Oh, I mean, the galaxy is so much bigger in the books. So much bigger. I mean, it feels freaking enormous. I mean, you know, I think all of us that work at UTN kind of do this on a daily basis, but like you're always like kind of explaining what it is and why you're into it and trying to like be this weird philosophical explanation for why it is that we do what we do, because it's not just like to get people into books. Like it's much deeper than that. And like, you know, Star Wars books are like the series that never ends. You know, it's like, imagine the analogy I give people all the time is like, you know how you're reading like the 5th Harry Potter book and you're like, dang it, the end is coming up. You know what I mean? Like, it's like that never happens with Star Wars because it just goes on and on and on and on forever. And there's hundreds of books and there's going to be more, thousands by the time we die. Like, they're going to be making these dang books when we're dead, for crying out loud. So like, it just never stops, and you don't get that in films. The galaxy is like 5 minutes on Wikipedia will make you feel like you don't know shit about Star Wars.
Yeah,
Even if
for
you
sure.
run
Easily.
if you run a Star Wars company and podcast, 5 minutes on Wikipedia makes you feel like an absolute moron. And I love that. I love that.
There's always something new.
I was gonna say the expanded universe for sure. And I also love one of the main things that I love about reading a brand new Star Wars book or just reading Star Wars books in general is going up to my buddies that are all hunters and like play softball and they do all this outdoorsy crap, and I'm like, hey man, do you know about Darth Bane, who created the Rule of Two, and he has his obelisk armor that's impenetrable, and he was like one of the strongest people ever? And they're like, what the f- are you talking about? I'm like, and I'll say it like in the middle of somebody's conversation, and it was like, that's our nerd friend over there. And it's like, that's right, and I hit home runs. But anyway,
Take that mantle.
Oh, man.
Yeah. There's just something about it, you know. I think every time I crack a new Star Wars book, I just get so excited because there is that level of intimacy. You know, Angelia said it's character intimacy and expansion, which I absolutely agree. You get that feeling of, especially with books that are continuations, like, oh, I get to hang out with my friends again. Like, I've missed Stellan. I've missed Bell Zettifar. Like, I'm very excited to see them again. But I think I also get the point of like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to now read this story that was written for me in a way. Like, I feel like there's a broader sense when I watch the TV shows or the films, because I think we know now so much about the behind the scenes and we know the directors and we're like, oh, this project and it's awesome. It's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
But there is something to be like, there's one person that wrote this down and it got edited. And there was story group. Like Tom walked us through a bunch of the process on our Ronin roundtables, and it's incredible. But there is something to be like, oh man, Claudia Gray has put to paper the next adventures of my characters that I love, and I can't wait to just sit here and.
It's harder to hate on it too, right? We're always talking about, you know, they are doing, you know, there's always just they at the top, right? They are ruining Star Wars. Disney's ruining. Who the hell is that? Like, who are they, right? Like, it's no one, right? You can't put a face to it, right? But like with the books, like we've met the authors and we've seen the space, you know, they sit in their space that they write the book in to be interviewed by us, like on our show, like, and it's modest and humble and like it's intimate and I love that about it. It's very personal, right? So like,
beings is what they are.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you get that so much more in the books because it's just a smaller industry. It takes less people to put a book together than it does to put a freaking multi-million-dollar film together, right? And to hear Tom come on the show and talk about like, you know, the stuff behind the scenes of like how they read the book so many times, how many people are involved, and it is like a little small scale collaborative project is so awesome. Like, to see that it is really cool. Even as big as the book projects are, it's really cool that they are still relatively small creative projects, right?
Yeah,
like they're still they all have less than 100 people that work on them. Definitely.
Oh yeah.
Most of them probably have less than like 20 people work on them, which is amazing, right? Like, it's just crazy to think about.
And I would say as I've gotten older, I've noticed that, you know, I get more specific about my book reading. Like, I really try to put my phone on silent and I like put on music if I want, or just like sit in a comfy chair and really just try to indulge in these stories. Cause like you said, these people have respected our time and respected our lives by gifting these to us. So let's respect that and really kind of live in it. Again, the only downside of that is that I do it a month earlier than anyone else and I can't freak out.
You have to hold it
But
down.
that's what Discord's for.
That's right. Angelia brought in one more really good point here at the end is the Star Wars book community has been an amazing and welcoming too. And that is so true. The Star Wars book community is not toxic, right? Like,
nope.
Not really. And we've done an extra good job, I think, of trying to foster this type of environment and set really clear rules and expectations of what it means to participate in the Utini community, you know, explicitly. But like, I think in general, the book the book community is not toxic. Like, I mean, it takes no effort to sit your ass in a movie theater and watch 2 hours of film one time and then go shit on it on the internet like endlessly. All right,
Yeah.
it takes no effort whatsoever. It doesn't take any energy, but like it takes a lot of energy to buy the book, to find time to read it, to set it aside, to save your place, to think about it. Like, it's not.
I read
it's
this
not-
400-page book after the other 18 400-page books that I read, and I just don't like where it's going. It's like, no, you're like, no.
like, what? like, are you perpetually unhappy like every day of your life?
Yeah,
Because
right.
like nobody can
It's
live
just happy,
like that.
man.
It's too big of a commitment. So like, I think the nature of reading does invite a certain amount of reflection and positivity, and I love that. I think it's healthy and fun, and
Yeah.
it makes you think about looking at other mediums differently, and I really appreciate that.
There's
Yeah.
effort that's put forth. You actually
Mhm.
and you learn something, even if you don't like the book. You've learned something throughout that entire journey of reading that 400-page book. You may not like everything in it, but there's always that one detail that you didn't know before that will help you
Right.
in
That's right.
speaking with your friends about Star Wars or just in the next book that you read.
And if you're reading Thrawn, you get to strengthen your wrist muscles as well, because that book is so freaking heavy. Holy
Well,
crap.
and speaking of which, everyone, the last thing we'll tell you, 2 weeks from tonight, which is going to be December 13th.
Yes.
Stretch that out a little bit. December 13th is going to be part 1 of our Thrawn Ascendancy Lesser Evil Roundtable. We are going to finish out 2021 by finishing out Thrawn. That's going to be the 13th and the 20th. And we have not said this on the show yet, but if you stuck around, congratulations, because December 27th will be the second annual Utini Awards. So get your fancy gear out, because Lord knows we are going to be looking
Dapper.
good on the streams on the 27th. So next week we have a normal Living Force show, as normal as these can get. 2 weeks from now, Thrawn Ascendancy Lesser Evil Part 1, then Part 2. Then we'll finish the year out with the Utini Awards, because this has been a truly tremendous year for Star Wars books. Because y'all remember Light of the Jedi came out this year? Hilarious.
Seems so far.
It's been it's been just incredible, but we're very excited for that. We hope you all enjoyed just thinking and reflecting about how incredible these books are that we get, and how every piece of Star Wars medium is just batting 1,000 right now. We can't wait for the next ones. But what I can wait for, my friends, is for next week, because that will do it for this week's episode of The Living Force. If you support us on Patreon, thank you so much for that. Again, keep your eyes peeled. We have Rogue One coming your way very soon with a video commentary. And a special thank you to Cheryl Bell, OK Endar, Jeremy Kazina, JG Kars, Earl Q, Patrick Ortiz, and Carl Sander on our Jedi High Council, and Matt Billington, Tyler Latour, Elizabeth Cloutier, Jason Mitchell, Freddie C., and Sally and Chris Eilerson on our Alliance High Command. You can find us on Twitter. The show is at Living Force Pod. I am at Eric Eilerson. Corey is at Doc Star Wars MD. Wes is at Boss Wes, and Charles is at the hospital, where he's also at C. Hankel. A special thank you to Matt Davenport, our amazing editor, Ryan, our graphic designer extraordinaire, and Wes, our producer and community manager. Thanks to Corey and Wes and Charles in the chat for podcasting tonight. Thanks to all of you for watching and listening. And as always, may the Force be with you.